Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, scholars and dignitaries, welcome to another episode. Welcome to my world.
Hello, friends. So, I was looking through some old articles I'd published, and I happened to find one from 2004. Here, I analyzed statistics from the U.S. Department of Justice, and it showed that crime in the United States was at the lowest level in 30 years. Again, crime in 2004 was at the lowest level in 30 years. Simply amazing. And more notably, whatever we were doing back then was working and working well. According to the statistics, violent crime had dropped over 55%, including murder, assault, sexual assault, and armed robbery, and property crimes had dropped by 49%, including burglary, theft, and motor vehicle theft. Other, lesser crimes had also correspondingly dropped. Compare that to now, exactly 20 years later, and crime has exploded across all categories. Foremost, according to the National Center for Health Statistics, just for violence, there were over 45,000 homicides last year, the highest level ever recorded in modern history, and over 1.2 million emergency room admissions for serious assaults. And again, other crimes also followed that upward trend correspondingly. So crime rates had increased from let's say an acceptable level, if you can say that, to an insane level in only a short period of time, 20 years. So, what caused this reversal? A reversal which actually places a peaceful, stable, and enduring society at great risk for chaos, instability, and even anarchy. Well, I saw an article recently that does, I think, place things in proper perspective. It talked about the reversal of long-held traditions, of the undoing of long-held community values and community social norms. The article stated that traditions, values, and community norms developed over generations of life and were held and prized because they worked. They worked. They gave stability to civilization where societies would collapse if they did not have these traditions to guide them. And I'll give you just one example, the Ten Commandments. When I grew up, everyone knew the Ten Commandments and the need to follow them in both your personal and professional life. But today, people have never even heard of them, much less follow them. So, do people worship God or keep the Lord's Day holy? Did they ever hear that you must not lie, cheat, or steal, not because it's a crime, but because it's a sin against God? Do they know not to commit adultery in any form? Do they even understand how holy it is to honor your mother or your father? Do they even understand sin today and what it does to your mind and especially to your soul? The answer is no. The United States was largely a Christian nation and built upon Judeo-Christian principles and traditions, and those have been eroding over the years, and so too has society. In fact, attendance at church has now dropped off precariously, and that does not bode well for families or for society. So that was the first major change we've seen in recent years that has led to an increase in crime. Another value? Well, for generations upon generations, society upheld the sacredness of life. They believed that life should be protected and honored from conception to natural death. Yet since the government's decision to permit and commercialize certain procedures, life is seen as anything but sacred, even cheap and meaningless. This, of course, lends to crime of all sorts. How about society's value in sex? At one time, society saw sex as a highly personal act relegated between a husband and a wife in the privacy of their home. And then we had the advent of the sexual revolution of the 60s, and amplified by the likes of Hugh Hefner in Playboy, Bob Guccione in Penthouse, and Larry Flynt in Hustler magazines. And sex not only became open and freely pursued, it became abnormal and disgusting. Social values were quickly abandoned, and things like hookups for sexual gratification became commonplace. Meanwhile, STDs, sexually related diseases including HIV and AIDS, rose to an all-time high. Divorce skyrocketed to a point where 1 in every 2 marriages ends in divorce. and the number of single-parent families rose to a point teetering at a threshold level quite dangerous for the continuance of a civilized society. People also began resisting one of the hallmarks of a civilized society, education, even to the point where a local school district had 17,000 suspensions just in 1 year and an all-time high rate in truancy and absenteeism. And of course, a lack of education fosters both poverty, a lack of understanding and engagement in social values, and, of course, an increase in crime. Recently, we've had an explosion in unemployment, but with one major difference. More and more people who are able to work are electing not to work, even when jobs are available. When we grew up, our value, taught by my grandparents and uncles, was that you work any job and do it to the best of your ability. When I was a kid, I ran errands, mowed lawns, or shoveled snow for a couple of dollars. I washed dishes. My first job was as a stock boy. My second job was as a janitor, and my third job, again, was as a stock boy. I painted houses, did odd jobs, anything to make a few dollars until I could find a job that gave me stability and benefits. That was our value. Work, save money, pay your bills, and support your family. And several environmental toxins have recently been legalized. Alcohol, marijuana, and gambling all destroy families, and yet are now being legalized, commercialized in our growth industries, fostering yet more homelessness, mental illness, depression, suicidal ideation, family breakups, and of course crime. And people think this is good, but it is destroying the very essence of civilization. And there is a final social change I want to talk about that is fueling crime. Just in Minneapolis a couple of years ago, over 1,500 businesses were ransacked, looted, robbed, or burned, and across America other buildings and businesses were torched, trashed, vandalized, broken into, and robbed, causing billions in insurance losses, and trust me, for taxpayers too. This has happened all over the country, and it had gotten out of control. The number one factor underlying this, and virtually every criminologist and sociologist would have to admit this, is the growing rift between the police and the communities they serve, and that was falsely factored by the vilification of the police, by the false narratives being spread by a handful of protesters with the support from certain governments and a corrupt and incompetent media, and this resulted in less aggressive policing policies forced by government in response to these local activists. Today, this has been a recipe for disaster, and now history proves it. And the result? City governments blame the police. What? They blamed the police for the crime, the riots, and the violence. They attacked the police. They vilified the police. Not the rioters, not the activists, and not the criminals, but the police. So this one mayor went full political and blamed it on the police and decided that the police would need to be held accountable. And he came out with a police reform plan to satisfy the protesters. In other words, the mayor threw the police under the bus. And other mayors followed and defunded the police, laid off police, or otherwise restricted their ability to do their jobs. And across America, crime naturally rose to these all-time high numbers. The value we held that police were our friends and allies was quickly changed, reversed within a couple of short months, and meanwhile, criminals took advantage of this to foster their own behaviors. So what I'm saying is that our families, our communities are in great crisis. Society has slowly been deteriorating. Our jails are full. Our schools are faltering, our families are failing, and our children suffer, so often needlessly, and too often without any awareness, concern, or action by our public leaders. We have a terrible problem in America, but it is not an economic problem. No, America has a quality of life problem, and it's a real crisis for families, for our neighborhoods, and for the whole community, and the quality of life will only further decline if we allow it. We know what these risk factors are. We also know what builds family stability in a healthy and strong community lifestyle that society needs to build and maintain. We know this. It is time to reverse the tide. The question is, are we willing to go the extra mile, to take the appropriate action, or will we allow certain nefarious forces to undermine and erode the quality standard of living we all want and we all need for a better life. We had traditions for a reason. Let's not discard them, thinking the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. Hey, be safe, be well, and may God bless you and your family.